Yate everyone. Hello, my name is Alonzo Winika, and this is my article review. Forewarned, I might mispronounce a lot of words because it does have a lot of native language um, from the Atlantic region in Canada. So the article is called "Coming Out is Part of the Life Cycle: A Qualitative Study Using Two-Eyed Seeing to Understand Two-Spirit Coming Out Process," and it was published by the Global Public Health. Um, it is a qualitative study that focuses on two-spirited individuals who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. And all the participants are members of the Atlantic region, tribal, First Nation. They're all members, and they all come from different, areas. So they did the survey. They did an online survey through social media and email, which had about 70 participants, and then they did 20 paper surveys. So 90 participants in total. They all came from their reservation or their reserve, also in rural areas and in urban areas within the Atlantic region in Canada. And the survey had a lot of mixed methods, I guess you could say. Well, two in general, I should say. They did the interview and online surveys, but the framework was also focusing on the two-eyed seeing. And it was just interesting to read about and understand how members of these tribal nations that are two-spirited do have a lot of backgrounds in their cultural upbringing and how that affected their mental health and their spiritual health and also their physical health. And it was just interesting to see in this modern age of how much colonization and culture and religion has played an impact to members of these communities. And looking back at it, I was also thinking that it was also part of the social ecological model, because it does pertain to the individual themselves and their interpersonal and the community level, which I also think has a big impact with any tribal community, and the policies that tribal nations play and how there's a lack of it within tribal communities, like I guess worldwide, could say, and also the culture of it all, of how we have moved so far away from our cultural backgrounds of how we viewed two-spirited people long before settlers came into this region, and how the idea and how the shift in, I guess, normativity, I guess. So it was interesting to read about and to see, and I guess this survey kind of like branched off of the tribal community in the Atlantic. The specific First Nation tribe is called, I'm going to butcher the name, it's called the Mikama Nation. I know I butchered that name, but in 2008, 2010, they found they had suicides. They had 10 suicides on their reserve, and 4 out of 10 of them, so 40% of the suicides that happened in that time frame, were two-spirited members. And so this kind of maybe like a grounded model kind of stemmed off. I guess you could say, was it a ground model? Sorry, I'm looking at my book too. Yeah, a grounded theory, I guess you could say, kind of like branched off of that statistic, quantitative data, and then, led to the qualitative study and research of, why and how is it impacting. And so the way the framework for the two-eyed seeing comes out is they interviewed people and kind of like got the gist of how coming out affected their mental health. And so they went into understanding, why and how can we improve this. And, they understood that it was a health equity gap for majority of tribal communities. And I think the researcher did, I think and believe, the researcher did a good job explaining this and understanding, connecting cultural and westernized views and how that has impacted the mental health and has really impacted the two-spirited community on tribal reservations. And, hearing stories about, in the article it says interview people would tell stories, like elders would tell stories about how we have moved far along from cultural ringings and the stories of two-spirited people in community and how they had a special placement, and to current modern age of how we disassociate them and how we disregard them, and how it's not normal for them to be accepted anymore, I guess, due to religion, a shift in religion. And yeah, it was interesting to see. I appreciated that he took time to hear these stories and see their expressions, but he tried to write it in the most informative way he could in this research study. But yeah, it was good. I do kind of wish it was more like broad spectrum within like the whole Canadian nation, but I know that's a lot of research and I know that's time consuming, but it would be interesting to hear different backgrounds from each First Nation within Canada, to at least like one person or one member of their community who identifies as two-spirited, and hear their cultural stories, and maybe there could be a different shift, or maybe there could be a different perspective from a different region. So I kind of thought that would be kind of an interesting thing to see. But I know here, like within America, the United States, that kind of face the same issue, and I think that's kind of like a global impact. But yeah, it just kind of got me thinking about how can we improve. And I know we see a lot of suicides, especially on my reservation, the Navajo Nation. It's very big, so it's very misrepresented of data for two-spirited people in general for the suicides. I don't think there is really good data for that. So just thinking about different policies and stuff. But I'm rambling on. But so yeah. So sorry if this kind of took too longer than others. But yeah, that was my article review, and thanks.